Okay, so this is the video that goes along with the Excel primer. I've pulled up some documents to kind of put things together for you so that you know really what you ought to have in front of you in order to do this well. So you'll see at the left, I have my data set that I've assigned to myself. It is currently untouched and super duper. And on the right, you see the Excel primer document, which includes the sort of the lab guide piece, which appears in every actual lab. There's a piece like this, dealing also with this data set, but a further step thereof. Um, and within that, you'll see that there's information on how to complete that. The other document that you should have is you should have your Mad Libs document because you need this information down here in the variables. Okay, so keep that in mind moving forward. All right, so I'm going to work through this, the Excel primer guide with you so that you know exactly where I'm at. The purpose of the Excel primer is to familiarize you with some of the basic things about using Excel, because I don't actually know offhand how many of you are familiar with this. But, you know, if you already know how to do this, this is a review. If you do not know how to do this, then this is when you learn. So good times. All right, so a couple things that just to start out, okay? So again, this is pro tip, have homework on handy. Again, by now you should be getting a copy of Excel via either the university or having your own copy, and you have the data set that is on Brightspace. You'll see at the top of this, the pieces need to be turned in because just to make sure that you're mentally looking at this every time you have a lab, you'll notice that there are two documents that on Brightspace, they are uploaded to the same assignment. So it's one assignment, two uploads at the same time. If you have problems with that or confusions, do let me know, but you should be able to upload both to the same. So as far as this goes, you're going to have two documents by the time you finish this. One's going to be called original, and it's going to be your base document you use for every single, what do you call it, lab from here on out. Okay, it's your base document. And notice it's not exactly the same as the one that I uploaded because you have to make some adjustments, specifically having to do with the Mad Libs. The other thing that you'll be uploading is the output of this Excel primer, which is some basic manipulations just so you can practice using something called a pivot table. And so when you finish this little guide, you should have two Excel sheets to upload. All right, so you'll see there are two parts to this. Don't let all the lines scare you. It's really quite simple. I just wrote everything on its own line. But the first one has to do with formatting. So this is setting up the first document, the part one, the original, the last name dash 490 original. The last name and the last name is your last name, as you will see when I name mine. But here we go. So open up your data set. That's this thing here on the left. Immediately rename it save as original. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to type save as, and it's actually going to ping me because I have all these documents, but whatever, it's fine. It's going to be like, do you want to replace it? I'm like, yes, I do. All right, 490 original. Immediately save. You want to replace it? Absolutely. All right, so now this document has a new name. That's my very first thing. So then I want to make sure I've saved it in a folder where I can find it. And just for the sake of argument, this is where, when you did save as, you could find a place, but if you need to do it later, yeah. So this is my folder with all my examples, right? Notice how I have a dedicated folder for these homeworks, in part because I want it to be really quick for you to find your original data, okay? And you may want to look back at one of these pieces at some point, okay? So just make sure you have one folder. At the bottom of your, so now we're looking again. So this is now I'm on A3, yeah. I want you to rename this tab. You can either double click it or you can right click it and click rename. And I want you to rename it data as mine is right now. Yours might have your name on it. So if my name was Susie, I would change Susie to data and call it a day. Okay, press enter, save the file, no big. So you're already done with part A, awesome. So now I need to change the variable names to match my Mad Lib. So first thing I need to do is go to variable C1 and match, so I can match column C from the variable Mad Lib. So here's C1. Actually, it looks like B needs to be on here too. Apparently I've lied to you. There's an extra variable. So we need to rename these variables to match. Oh, it looks like, oh, I'm sorry. No, here I'm telling you about the titles. Excuse, that's what it is. So group's going to stay the same. We're going to rename this title and this title and this title. That's what's happening right here, okay? Not the whole column, the titles. So here, my title for column C should be treetops in my particular case. So whatever you picked, I'm going to go back in here and go treetops. Boop, renamed. And then column D, wrench juggling, okay. I'm gonna go where it says action rate and go wrench juggling. Boop. And then I'm gonna go here to column E, which is my language rate, and I'm gonna write complementizer rate. In this case, it's complementizers per sentence, but that's not extremely important. Okay, so let's see. I go back here, I've renamed it. Here's a nice little thing to help you out. If you're not familiar already with Excel, you can actually slide these guys to make them easier to read. You can just grab the edge and go back and forth. The other thing you can do is double click on the line between them. Boop. And then it will also make it wide enough. So especially if you have a big name, it might be nice to do that for the sake of argument. I think my treetop names are big, so column C is going to be bigger eventually too. Okay, so right now I've just done the variable names, the title row, okay? And then want me to save the file. I will save the file. Now, down to section C, using filters and renaming the variable values. Now I'm going to highlight row 1, this right here, and I'm going to go find my filter function. Okay, mine's squished, so I know where it is, but it's going to look kind of like this when you have it big, and you'll see sort and filter, and you're going to find filter. It's going to be very similar even on the Mac version of this, but if you need to find the filter button, if it's not exactly where mine's laid out, help will help you find that. And also if you have to Google where is the filter button, you can do that, of course. All right, so I've just filtered this, and this is important because it helps me more quickly and easily rename my variables. So now I want to click on the small arrow next to it in the so this is okay. So I'd sort and filter, change, choose filter. You saw me do that. Okay, cell B1, the drop-down menu. Okay, this is very important. The ability to do the filtering has to do with these drop-down menus. It looks very similar on a Mac. I can tell you that for a fact. It's very similar. So now what I want to do is sort A to Z. Boop. And notice I've got A and B now, okay? This sorting is incredibly important. It's going to make your life easy, and sometimes you need to do it in order to copy paste things and do analyses. So now I've sorted A to Z on column B, and I want to rename the first exemplar of each group, such as A, to match the groups from the Mad Lib, such as tall, short, has hair, doesn't have hair, whatever. My group A is going to be short fur from my Mad Lib because I remember, but where are they at? Yeah, short fur and curly fur, exactly. And then I'm going to find my first B and I'm going to write curly fur. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to drag it, okay? This is another very useful thing to be able to do. So you see I have a little green box around this variable. If I put my cursor over the bottom right-hand corner, my cursor will turn into a plus sign. And once I do that, I can drag it to fill the cells that I need to copy it into. There are more than one way to do this, right? You also can copy and paste it, but I do like dragging personally. So now you see I've renamed all of my participants by what kind of fur they have. Now the group is distinguished and legible. This is the purpose of the Excel primer, is to make it very legible. And then do it the same way for treetops. So I'm going to sort like this, and then I'm going to name the treetops, and mine have silly names, and yours may or may not. So I'm going to name them first. The second one has this also silly name, G-row, and then the third one has this silly name. Okay. And I will show you the other way to do this. So I've here copied. You can also do Control-C or Command-C, highlight, and paste. Boop. Also works. Okay. So that's the other way, is to copy and paste. Or, like I said, just drag. Okay. All right. So now I've replaced group and treetop so that each participant corresponds to some combination. Now I'm going to go back and sort my participants smallest to largest, just to put them back into order. But you can see how valuable that ability is. I can immediately look at my participants by where they are or what they're like, right? So now I have this assortment of of Wookiees, actually, by what they do. Okay, so now that you're done with that, you're going to save it. This is the 490 original. This is the first document. It is done. Done, 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 done. So this version, as it is the first document you upload to your assignments for the Excel primer. Now we've got to make the second one, okay? So in order to do a lab every time, and that includes the second half of the Excel primer, you are going to make a new copy of it and rename it. So I'm going into File, and I'm going to click Save As. If you're in this particular menu and you need to, for example, put it in a specific folder, like if it's saving in the wrong place or downloads or something, Browse or More Options typically will take you to the location. So if I click More Options, you'll notice I'm in my homework folder, but you could sort in here and find it if you needed to in whatever the browser looks like for your particular OS. So anyway, all right, so I'm doing Save As because I need to make a new file. Now Save As will make a second file, essentially a copy of it. And the original will be whatever you just saved it as. Make sure you save it before you do this. So now I need to make the Excel primer. So you'll see it's my last name, -490 Excel primer. And once I do that, do I want to, yes, I'll replace it because I already have it, but it's fine. Okay, so this is the beginning of the Excel primer. I've got to do a few things to it. But now I have a copy that's for this. So when I finish the second page of this Excel primer and save it, this will be the document that goes into the second document that goes into the assignment. All right, so we've just already finished part A. Okay, so make sure you put it in your dedicated Lin490 folder. So now we're going to make a pivot table in a new tab. Okay, pivot tables are very, oh, see what I said here about the variables being wide? Yep. Pivot tables are really valuable, honestly. It's one of the most valuable things you can ever learn to do in Excel. It's really informative, truly. So what it says here is highlight the cells and values of them in the data tab. So I'm in the data tab right here, and I'm going to highlight these by clicking and dragging. Yep, notice how they're all grayed out now. And then I'm going to go to the Insert tab, and I'm going to find Insert Pivot Table. And again, I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it. But you'll see when I'm in the Insert tab, so Home tab, Insert tab, Data tab, whatever, Insert, Pivot Table is pretty much always the first thing. Again, if yours is laid out different, you can Google it to find out where it is, but I'm going to click Pivot Table, and it's going to give me this little Create Pivot Table thing. So data range, if you haven't already selected it, that's where it is. Click New Worksheet, which should be auto-selected, I assume. If not, click it and press OK. Boop, and you'll notice now I have another tab, okay? So let me go ahead and open up my second document again. All right, so with the cells highlighted, pivot table, new worksheet, press OK, and then I want you to rename this pivot. And if you recall, or you look above, I can either double click or right click and choose rename if I want to rename something. So now you should have one tab called data, one tab called pivot. So please be consistent with this because it's helpful to stay organized. Getting not organized in this process, you might know what you're doing in the moment, but if you ever had to refer back to it, and this is even more so true of other applications of anything in Excel, you need to know what stuff is. Okay, so label it. Okay, keep stuff organized. All right, so now I've finished part B and I'm on part C. I'm going to set up my pivot table. Look how close we are to the end. All right, so now I'm inside the pivot tab and I'm going to look at the fields menu on the right-hand side. You see, here's my 5 variables: participant group, location or tree tops in my case, action rate, wrench juggling in my case, and language rate or complementizer rate in my case. Okay, so yeah, it says if you don't see them all, you need to go back and make another one. You can also go into this, I think it's the pivot table analyze tab and change data source if you didn't get enough columns, but I'm going to guess you got them because we did it together, but that's how you do it. You also can refresh after you've picked the right one if you needed to change it. But anyway, okay, so now I have all my 5 variables and it wants me to drag the variable group into the rows box. So I'm going to grab group, I'm going to drag it into rows. Bam. Now you see my 2 types of fur. Okay. And then I'm going to drag participant, okay, into the corresponding and the variable so the language rate into the values box. So here's participant. Bam. And column E, so language rate, my case complementizers, bam, go in here, okay? So then click the tiny arrow next to sum of participant in the values box and change it to in value field settings. So that's this little arrow here, right? Notice that everything, not everything, but many things have little drop down windows, right? Here's one under row labels, here's one under group, here's one under participant. And if I go down to the very last thing, there's this thing called value field settings. And what this will allow you to do is pick between different types of analyses of these things, right? So right now it's on sum, which means that I have taken my participant numbers and added them up, which means it's 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus whatever, right? And it depends on who's in the group precisely. So I think these people are already ordered. So curly fur is like person 1, person 4, person 7, person 12, it's just a random assortment. So that, okay. So we're in this field. So instead of sum, we want something else. So let's see what we have in our guide. Now I'm on page 2, part C, under 6. In the value field settings, change the summary type from sum to count. Okay, now I'm going to go to count. Oh, it's the second one. Cool. So now I know that I have 15 participants in each group. Much more informative than the sum of the random assortment of their participant numbers. Okay. All right, so now it sounds count. You should see, yep, 2 groups, numbers should be, right, should be 15 because there should be halvesies, right? And then that being said, then in column, so right now it's a column C, but the last column of the pivot table, you do have a sum of complementizer rate. So what we're seeing essentially is, if we were to, it doesn't make much sense. You'd probably do averages in real life, but just for the sake of argument, it's fine. But this is summing up all of the complementizer rates across participants, right? So it just so happens that the curly fur group has a lower overall complementizer rate, and the short fur group has an overall higher complementizer rate. Okay, the other thing that you need to be able to do, and it's true here, and it's true in the actual data tab as well, but we'll do it here for the practice. But I want you to keep in mind the same process looks like in the data tab. Okay, so now we want to use the filters. So we're going to use the filter function actually here in the pivot table fields, and I'm going to take the treetops, okay, and I'm going to go and drop it into filters, okay. So what this allows me to do, and there's other ways to do it, but this is a way to do it. It allows me to pick some amount of treetops, in my case, locations, and yours, whatever you picked, black holes or burrows or malls, who knows. And then pick some subset of them to look at the data from, okay? This is just to help you understand exclusion. It's not really a functional analysis we're about to do. I'm just showing you how it works. So once you do that, again, we have that drop-down menu, but now you'll notice the filter has appeared in the top left on top of the pivot table for some reason. It lives there. I'm not quite sure why, but if I click on it, now my drop-down menu will show you what variables, what levels the variable, right, which treetops are in this category, the 3 different types, right? And they've been ordered now by alphabetically rather than what they originally were, first, second, third. No big, doesn't matter at all, actually. You don't need to keep track of whether they used to be first, second, third, or whatever. So, okay, now in here, however, if I wanted to exclude someone, I have to turn on select multiple items, because this will allow me to pick 2 instead of 3, right? With this off, I'm basically could just pick 1, right? So if I do that, so you see there's only 5 per group now, because there's 5 people in each group that are from this treetop, and you'll see the sum of their complementizer rates. But if I wanted to exclude this particular treetop, for example, I will turn on select multiple items and just pick everything else, right? So it's literally just include or not include, check boxes, and then press OK. And this is the last thing I want you to do, okay? So I want you to do this, practice disincluding, taking out one of the locations. I don't care which one, does now matter. I just picked this one with an R. But as a result, your count should go, instead of 15 each group, to 10. This will show you you've done it correctly. And then your complementizer rate over here should be lower than what it was, or different, I guess. I guess it could be higher if this group was super low or something, right? You see mine was 36 and 51, and then if I take out this one with the R, it's now 26 and 35, okay? So what you're looking to see here is a change. This should be 10, each of these, and this should just be something different, right? Compensatory rate should just be something else. I'm not going to tell you what that should be, and it's not super important because, again, the sum of rates is not super informative, but the experience of doing this is important. The next thing I'm going to say, as I had mentioned, oh yeah, if you lose the field settings, just click back onto it. As I told you, these drop-down boxes for exclusion are really important. I'm just going to mention in passing the same thing can be done over here. I can unclick one of them and then you only see the other two. And then I could sort that group and I can do that over here, or I could have all these guys but then take out one of the fur types or whatever. So just be aware, this is available across the board, okay? All right, so that's all I needed to do, right? Again, I inserted my pivot table. I made my little pivot table fields look like this. I sorted out one of the treetops, ended up with 10 in each group, and I'm great. All right, save file, and then I'm going to close it, and then I'm going to upload those 2 files to the assignments. That's that. This is your intro to Excel, and those skills will reappear to some degree throughout the semester. We will build on them, but those are the big ones. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know.